Sassoli et la présidente von der Leyen prononceront des discours en plénière. Ce sera aussi l'occasion pour les députés d'entendre la première ministre de Nouvelle-Zélande, Jacinda Ardern, et la vice-présidente des États-Unis, Kamala Harris. Par ailleurs, à l'ouverture de la session, le président fera observer une minute de silence en hommage à l'ambassadeur italien assassiné le 22 février dernier en République démocratique du Congo, M. Luca Attanasio. Et ce tragique événement seront aussi évoqués jeudi matin au cours des débats et résolutions sur les droits de l'homme. Autre temps fort cette semaine, mercredi à 13 h, le président Sassoli, le Premier ministre Antonio Costa et la présidente de la Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, signeront la déclaration commune relative à la conférence sur l'avenir de l'Union européenne. Cette signature marquera officiellement le début du processus qui permettra aux citoyens de participer de façon active à la refonte des politiques et institutions de l'Union européenne. Et ce, dans le cadre d'une multitude d'événements, Agora, ainsi que via une plateforme numérique multilingue. Après les élections européennes en 2019, les députés européens avaient affirmé de manière
2019, MEPs have repeatedly stated their wish to get this conference off the ground, and the Parliament intends to play a driving role in organising the conference, and that was recalled by the presidents of political groups last week. On Tuesday on this topic, Parliament and Commission will table for the first time a Eurobarometer jointly setting out the expectations of citizens for this conference and for the future of the EU. And the week will also be marked by the vote on two important programmes, as announced yesterday: the InvestEU programme, a guarantee of €26 billion in the EU budget, allowing for the mobilisation of €100 billion by 2027 to produce pharmaceuticals, medical devices, information technology products and so on. This is part of the Next Generation EU Recovery Programme. And then a second programme will be on the agenda, EU for Health, and that's 5.1 billion for 2021-2027, and it's designed to be a response to the COVID crisis and is intended to fight against future health threats. The role of the European Parliament was in the driving force, getting a European budget commensurate with the challenges, and alongside the MFF there was, if you recall, an issue of rule of law conditionality, which will be discussed on Thursday morning when members will ask the Commission about the implementation of that mechanism established at the end of last year and was called for by Parliament. On Wednesday, Parliament will have to vote on climate urgency, stepping up the world level of ambition and trying to encourage movement in third countries which are applying less strict rules on emissions and greenhouse gas emissions. Border adjustment tax will be looked at by members for third countries importing into the EU, and also there'll be a legislative proposal asking for the Commission to bring forward urgent legislation guaranteeing that companies are responsible for violations of human rights, the environmental good governance. And then, before I give the floor to my colleagues in political groups, let me say something about an issue related to fundamental values. On Wednesday afternoon, members will discuss attempts by the Polish, Hungarian and Slovenia to silence media independence, and after the debate on Wednesday, on Thursday they will vote on a text proposing to declare the EU an LGBTIQ freedom zone. I'm going to ask Daniel Costa to join us for the EPP.
Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of the EPP group, I would like to raise three topics which are important for us during this plenary session. The first is the debate which will take place on Wednesday about media freedom. It has been in the first place the EPP group who proposed to have such a debate. It's about different countries. We would like to raise in particular the issue of Poland. As many of you know, the peace-led government my ECR colleague might be ready to explain this later. The PiS-led government proposed a new law which will heavily tax ads, advertisements in private media. This would lead to millions of additional costs for all private media in Poland, and this would most probably heavily reduce the choice of media in Poland. This has to be debated, and it will be debated on Wednesday. This is the first topic I wanted to raise. The second topic is the so-called carbon border adjustment mechanism, which will be debated today and voted on later this week on Wednesday. The EPP group is clearly in favor of such a mechanism. It's a central part of the Green Deal, and we want this in order to prevent unfair competition from non-European climate polluters. We are in favor of the ambitions of the Green Deal, but this must not lead to a situation where production costs producing something in the European Union is exposed to unfair competition from the same kind of production from outside Europe, where they do not have the same climate ambitions. And that's why we want this mechanism. What is important for us is that existing mechanisms, like what is called the European emission trading scheme, the ETS, there are already mechanisms in place which also prevent that what we call carbon leakage, the relocation of energy-intensive European production to third countries. There are already mechanisms in place, free allowances for such companies, and the EPP group would like to keep these free allowances in place while introducing this new carbon border adjustment mechanism. This is the second topic I wanted to raise, and the third topic is the debate about the European semester on Wednesday, and the debate about the recovery fund and the national recovery plans on Thursday. For us, it is particularly important to make sure that the money of the recovery fund is spent well. We have now, historically, the biggest ever solidarity mechanism in the European Union in place. It's in place. It's not yet fully running because there are still some member states who need to ratify a part of it. And of course, every single member state has to present a national recovery plan. This is necessary in order to profit from the European money. The debate will be about the state of play on Thursday. We as the EPP, we will make sure that every single national recovery plan is scrutinized. We will look into all the details because we really want to make sure that taxpayers' money is spent well. These are the three topics which I wanted to raise, and I'm happy to answer questions in a minute.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Untitled Chapter for the group S&D.
Thank you, Delphine. Welcome, everyone. For our group, we will have our usual press conference tomorrow with our group president at 9:45 in this room, and of course remote. Our group president will speak on two issues. One is the discussion on the social pillar in light of the Porto summit to come up, which is a big priority for our group. And then secondly, she will speak on the Lgbtiq Declaration. I will come to that. Today is a big day, I think, for all women across Europe, and also for the men, and who support this International Women's Day. We have had our first Spotify list with songs from women all across Europe, which we shared on our platform, so please have a look at that. I hope you will enjoy it. We also had today Helena Dalli, Commissioner, or have her in our group right now as we speak, to speak on the topic of women who are particularly suffering in COVID times. And on Friday last week we did a big event, online event on this topic, and looked in particular into, of course, employment or unemployment worsening for women, and also gender-based violence. And as you know, our call for gender equality is quite far-reaching. We welcomed the Pay Transparency Directive proposal from the Commission, but we want more. We call for a ratification of the Istanbul Convention. We think that minimum wages need to be established. We need to take action on the Women on Board Directive. And finally, also with regard to the national recovery plans, they were mentioned by my colleague. Here it's important that the gender perspective is included and that clear measures are explained as to how these shall contribute to gender equality. This plenary has many progressive agendas, points on the agenda, so I would just mention a few. I mentioned the discussion on the Porto Summit, which is very important for us. We think that the social pillar should include clear and binding targets, and we are working towards the Porto Summit in May, where we hope this to be adopted. Then we come, of course, to the reports mentioned InvestEU and EU for Health programs, so also key priorities for our group. Another important report in the economic field is the due diligence report led by our MEP Lara Wolters as rapporteur, calling for binding standards for companies with regard to environment, labor and human rights. I mentioned the Lgbtiq Declaration. As you can imagine, for us as Socialists and Democrats, this is a very important debate and vote on this resolution. It shows that the EP stands by the side of the LGBTI community and advocates for their rights. It calls on citizens and also politicians and decision makers to not accept when these EU values of freedom of their rights are violated, that LGBTI free zones like in Poland are not tolerable, and that calls on the Council and the Commission to take concrete action against any government going against these values, whether it's in Poland, Hungary or elsewhere in the European Union. And in that same respect, the report was mentioned by my EPP colleague. We welcome and called for the debate on media freedom in Poland, Hungary and Slovenia, and we particularly focused on the inclusion of Slovenia, where we see media freedom worsening, as we have seen with Prime Minister Janez Janša. Final point for me, we welcome the signature, finally, of the Conference on the Future of Europe Declaration, the joint declaration. Great work by the Portuguese presidency and Antonio Costa, Prime Minister, done. Here we made sure that our main calls for a bottom-up approach, namely that the citizens have a say, that the youth can be involved, that we have youth agoras, and also here again gender and geographical balance and social diversity is included. We think that the governance structure is a good one we have now. So with that, I would conclude. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Uta. Pour le groupe Renew, Hugues Baudouin.
For the Renew Group, Mr. Baudouin.
Bonjour à tous.
Good afternoon. Let me begin by introducing myself because it's the first time I have been in the press conference. I'm Baudouin. I am the new spokesperson for the Renew Group and for its president, Dacian Cholos. I've spent many years asking questions. Now I'm going to be answering. Now, during this plenary session, our focus will particularly be on the defence of democratic values and the rule of law. We see a thread that runs through various events that we will see during this plenary session. Firstly, International Women's Day. This isn't really a celebration, but it's a day that recalls that the path towards equality is a difficult one and is a long-term struggle. We have a commitment to gender equality in our group, and we look forward to, for example, the unblocking of the directive of women on boards, on the boards of large company, and we also welcome the Commission initiative on salary equality. The salary gap was 16.3% in 2015. It was 4.1% in 2018. We believe that the decrease in the gender pay gap is too slow. Today, we particularly think about all those women working on the front line. For example, the women in Myanmar who are demonstrating against the generals, the journalist women in Afghanistan killed simply because they're women. We deplored 3 executions last week in Afghanistan. The women of Belarus who are fighting a difficult struggle against the dictatorship, the Turkish women fighting against violence against them, and of course Polish women who are fighting for access to abortion. Democracy again when it comes to signing the joint declaration establishing the Conference on the Future of Europe on Wednesday. This is a priority for the new group. We wanted to see that conference take effect. We ensured that it did, and now we need to see these debates launched. There's no more time to waste on this. On Wednesday as well, there's a debate and then a vote on the resolution proclaiming the European Union an Lgbtiq freedom zone. This is 2 years after the creation of the first Lgbtiq free zone in Poland. We should recognise that the situation hasn't improved in Poland since then. Intolerance is increasing in Poland and other European countries. On Wednesday again, members will be discussing press freedom and the efforts of the authorities in Poland, Hungary and Slovenia to call this a key into question. This is unacceptable. Our group is very mobilised on this. We have ensured that Slovenia was added to that debate. Our president is very concerned when it comes to the events of recent days, and it would be good for the Slovenian Prime Minister to come back to the path of reason just a few months before Slovenia takes the rotating presidency of the EU, during which he will be the guarantor of the fundamental rights in the European Union. Mr. Cioloş will be speaking in the debate on the rule of law, and he will be saying that this rule of law mechanism isn't simply something that looks good on paper. It needs to be used fully in line with the criteria of the text, of course, and we expect the Commission to act proactively and in line with the prerogatives that it has under the treaties. Those are our priorities for this week. Thank you, Hugues, and welcome.
Guten Tag, herzlich willkommen.
Good afternoon. Welcome to this round of group speakers. So International Women's Day is something that's important. Christina Anderson, our coordinator in the FAM committee, will be available to talk about this, but we regret that we have to celebrate this in a shortened form, and the problem is that we have missed 12 sessions in plenary this week. Last year we celebrated this in a shortened ceremony, and we hope we'll be able to celebrate it properly soon. Tomorrow, Tuesday, we will be talking about taxation. Our coordinator in the Econ Committee is available to discuss that with any journalists who are interested, and we also have a coordinator, Mr. Koos, in the Budgetary Control Committee. An important issue on Tuesday is the Ombudsman. This is very important because this is the only control body that citizens have, as well as OLAF. So we would be very pleased if the Ombudsman would deal with the essential issues that Europe faces, and the Ombudsman has our support for that. On Wednesday we're talking about the European semester, the growth strategy and the action plan on The social pillar, Guido Ryle out from North Rhine-Westphalia, and other members are available to answer your questions on that, as our coordinators in the committee, Culture Committee. Christine Anderson can answer your questions on the media there, because the media is not only an issue dealt with in line with fundamental rights, it's something that is dealt with in the Culture Committee in the European Parliament as well. And to conclude, on Thursday we have the debate on the rule of law mechanism. We have our experts, Christine Anderson and Nicholas Fest from the Internal Affairs Committee, available for that. And much more important than this is the long-term strategy on agriculture. Corona has shown us that many people are leaving the cities and towns to live in the countryside, and this may well have an effect. This is an important debate and should not be the last debate on Thursday. It should have a better place on the plenary session, but Maximilian Krah is our spokesperson on that and will be representing the ID group's position there. Thank you.
Yes. And now remotely, Pia co-host from the Green groups. Pia, yes, we have you.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Perfect. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Delphine. So today it's International Women's Day, and the Parliament has the privilege to welcome messages from Prime Minister of New Zealand and US Vice President Kamala Harris. We're happy to have them there, at least via video message. And still, globally and in the European Union, women are subject to violence, feminicides, inequalities in earnings and representation. And the cases of gender-based physical, psychological and sexual violence have even increased across Europe. And the COVID-19 crisis impacts women in particular, leaving it mainly to them to take care of children and care work. So we urge for equal pay, we urge for stopping the violence. We launched a petition and urging the Commission to come up with a directive on gender-based violence. The hashtag is No More Empty Words. And we urge the Commission to come up with a proposal to prevent, respond to, and end gender-based violence online and offline. Please also check our new paper on feminist foreign policy, to have women represented everywhere in every kind of policies. In this regard, on Thursday, we expect the European Court of Justice Advocate General's opinion on the whole EU signing the Istanbul Convention, as was requested by the Parliament. Another thing I want to flag is the resolution, the debate and resolution on declaring the EU as an LGBTQI freedom zone. And this comes ahead of the sad second anniversary of the declaration of the first so-called LGBTQI ideology-free zone in Poland. So we launched an inter-party resolution with the LGBTI intergroup and declare the EU to be an LGBTIQ freedom zone in which everyone can love and live freely. And we're happy that we could table this together with EPP, SD, Renew and GUE to send a clear sign to the LGBTIQI community that we stand with them against all the autocrats and haters and will defend European values. On this note, there will be a photo opportunity tomorrow, Tuesday at 1:30 at the Esplanade in front of the European Parliament. There's another debate I would like to flag, which is the one on government's attempts to silence free media in Slovenia, Poland and Hungary. We call on the Commission to finally follow up on the Article 7 procedure and urge European governments to stop covering Viktor Orban in the Council and stand on the side of democracy and the rule of law. This debate will be followed up with Gwendoline Delbos-Corfield, who is our MEP and EP rapporteur for the rule of law situation in Hungary, Terry Reinke, our shadow for the rule of law situation in Poland, and some others. There's also our Yannick Jadot's report towards WTO-compatible EU carbon border adjustment mechanism. which will take into account the EU's carbon footprint as a key element of the Green Deal and on the path to climate neutrality goal, the European one by 2050, and as you might know, the Greens EFA one by 2040. And this is about decarbonization of the EU industry while mitigating the risks of relocating production in third countries and of exporting our emissions. And we want every kind of industry to be part of this mechanism, which is supposed to start as of 2023 for sectors like cement, steel, aluminium, chemicals, fertilizers, and also the power sector. We expect the Commission to come up with this proposal in June, together with the so-called Fit for 55 package. And we are happy that we included in the report that all sectors must contribute, and a demand on the CO2 price on import and about stopping outsourcing EU emissions. We also would like to link this instrument to the ETS reform to deliver an ambitious carbon price.
Thank you very much, Pia. Michael Strauss.
Frankly, I have another item to flag.
I thought you were done.
It's the one on corporate due diligence and corporate accountability, which is very important to us. The debate is today in the afternoon, and we want to send a strong signal and guidance to the Commission to their upcoming proposal to stop modern slavery. And we are very happy that we managed to have in this report making due diligence a precondition for working in the EU market, which applies to all large companies and which applies not only to one part of the supply chain, but to the whole part, including environmental protection as an element of due diligence and climate protection, and plus an import ban on products. This is very important to us, which have been produced with forced labor, like forced labor camps in China or child labor. A last point I would like to raise is on the conference on the future of Europe. We are very happy that finally it took a bit long in our view, but finally we have this declaration and can stop working and engaging with citizens across Europe. And please note, tomorrow there will be no presidential briefing. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Pia, and apologies again, Michael Strauss, for easier.
Thank you, Delphine. Good afternoon, everybody. Now here are the ECR Group's priorities for this week's plenary session. First, we are very much in support for the InvestEU program. For us, this is important that new investments can be made now and that the Parliament found ways to prioritize funding to run the program. The EU must be capable of tackling the investment gap that has been further widened by the COVID-19 pandemic, and to do so with immediate effect. The ECR Group is of the opinion that the program will have, on the one hand, a positive impact on the EU economy as a remedy from the pandemic, and on the other hand, an additional positive impact on SMEs and on regions most affected by the so-called green transition as well. Secondly, we are in support of the new standalone EU for Health program that will also be debated on and voted on Tuesday, and that forms a part of the wider EU recovery package. It will support national policies as well as cooperation of health strategies and disease prevention between member states. ECR Group Shadow Rapporteur Joanna Kopczynska believes that the program will provide tools and capacities to better prepare for future health crises while at the same time respecting the existing treaty parameters in the area of public health. And thirdly, as the joint declaration on the Conference on the Future of Europe is signed on Wednesday, we still have some doubts on the setting and the political motivations behind this conference. However, the ECR Group will welcome the conference if it is truly fair, really represents the citizens, and when alternative voices who differ from the EU federalist camp will get the opportunity to be heard as well. As you might well know, our vision for the future of Europe is one of respect for the uniqueness of each of Europe's national democracies. For the ECR group, the choice is not just between the two possibilities of more Europe or no Europe. We are positive about European cooperation among the states, but we are against over-centralization and the one-size-fits-all approach. We want respect for national tradition and diversity. Now, because my colleague has mentioned this, the debate on the attempt to silence free media in Poland, Hungary and Slovenia. With regards to Poland, the ECR group is of the opinion that the title is quite inaccurate because the recent initiative is still only a draft proposal that is still subject to interministerial consultations. We also believe that the national matters shouldn't be politicized by the European Parliament because this blame and shame could tear European peoples apart from each other. So far from the ECR group. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michael. And from the left, David Lundy, remotely. Do we have you, David? Yes, we're listening to you.
Thanks, Delphine. Yeah, this is David here from the Left Group. Just a few things from our side on corporate accountability. For us, multinationals are out of control with entire business models built around systemic human rights abuses. The EU's complicity in this must end, and the vote this week will hopefully be a step towards that. On the EU as an LGBTIQ freedom zone, at a time when the right in many countries, represented by some of the groups here, is lashing out at our queer sisters, brothers and siblings, often with extremely violent consequences, we need to leave no room for doubt that discrimination and persecution of this nature has no place in the EU. So we're backing this declaration and hope that the other groups vote for it too. Ahead of the meeting of the TRIPS Council of the WTO this Wednesday, Thursday, we had actually sought a debate and a resolution in the hope that Parliament would send a positive message on the need to waive intellectual property protections on COVID-19 vaccines and treatments. This request, unfortunately, didn't get majority support, but we'll continue with the pressure on that front. Our briefing is at 11:30 tomorrow morning with Manon and Martin, and you're all very welcome, of course, to that. Thanks.
Thank you, David. Are there any questions from journalists? And if so, to whom are you asking them? I don't know if there is a question in the room. If it's not the case, do we have a question? I think we have a question online by Mrs. Almay Catalin.
Yes.
We hear you, we don't see you.
Yes.
Yes,
thank you very
we see
much.
you.
Yes, I'm Katalin Harmai, Hungarian journalist from the independent newspaper Népszava. My question is connected not so much to the plenary meeting, but to the operation of the European Parliament, and I am addressing my question to the spokesperson of the European Parliament. We know that the Fidesz delegation left the European People's Party group last week. They are now part of the group of non-aligned. They do not have to resign from their elected positions, but as far as I know, they have to resign from their membership in the different committees of the Parliament. So would you please enlighten us what are the next steps, how to divide these positions in the committees, and also has it ever happened that a whole national delegation left a group, a political group in the Parliament? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Katalin. There have been changes. Of course, there are always changes during the legislation or the legislature of different groups and political different delegations leaving political groups to join others. Regarding your question, indeed, elected posts remain with the MEP because it's been elected by the plenary. We speak here about the vice presidents, the quaestors, for example. Regarding the committees, the rules of procedure are clear. If you are changing from a group, the post, you just leave the job to the political group that remains with the position in this committee. So it will be a discussion to have if there are severe imbalances in the Conference of Presidents, but it's for each committee now to reorganize its work. So for now, yes, those members have left their positions in different committees. Voilà. And for now, they are with the non-attached. I don't know if I helped you. Then I have the second question, is Anna Hubert. Anna, si tu peux appuyer sur le bouton Speak
Can you press the speak button, please?
et ouvrir ta vidéo.
And switch on your video feed.
Il n'y a pas de connexion. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions?
No connection. Are there any other questions?
Personne. Si c'est pas le cas.
No one? Well, if not, just one moment.
Ok. On reviendra bilatéralement vers Anna Hubert.
We'll come back to Anna Hubert bilaterally if we can help her, and pass any specific questions on to the big groups, to the group's spokespeople if necessary. Thank you. Have a nice International Women's Day.
you.